name is Simone Myers, and I'm coordinator of the Circle the Pyramid event and Global Peace Conference, as well as director of the Earth Cure organization. In the short amount of time today, I'm going to share with you some interesting information about how we can and do make a difference in our world on a global scale to counter really serious issues that face us. I will provide compelling evidence of experiments primarily compiled by author Gregg Braden and Japanese scientist Dr. Emoto, who's known for his amazing work with water. The theme of these experiments is that we individually and collectively impact a field of energy that was previously unknown. This field was detected in 1995 by a Russian physicist when he was doing an experiment with vacuum tubes. He realized that the tube was not completely empty and it contained protons that were in a scattered formation. So he placed human DNA inside the tube, wondering if it would have an impact on these protons, and it did. What he noticed was that the protons with the DNA lined up in an organized fashion. So then he assumed by removing the DNA that the protons would go back to being scattered, but they didn't. They remained arranged. So his conclusion was that DNA has an impact on this field, previously unknown, and called it DNA phantom effect. Also in the 1990s, the U.S. Army did an experiment where they took human DNA from a donor and placed it in a device that measures changes. They had the donor in a different room than where his DNA was located. Then they gave the donor various stimulus to develop different emotional responses. The device would then measure the donor's responses and the DNA's in a separate room. When they compared the two data charts, they noticed that they were identical. In other words, there was no time lag between when the donor was having an emotional response and the DNA in the separate room. They then repeated the experiment with the donor having been different increments of miles away and got the same result. Among other things, they concluded that this existing field has no time or space limitations. So does this field have a name? One of the Apollo astronauts called it nature's mind, and Stephen Hawking called it the mind of God. But regardless of what we call it, clearly these experiments are showing and demonstrate that our emotion has an impact on this field. Also in the 1990s, the Heart Math Institute discovered that the human heart has a tube torus of energy surrounding it by at least 8 feet. Their equipment, however, can only measure up to 8 feet, so it suggested that it goes beyond that. So they wanted to measure the local and non-local effects of this field. They placed human DNA in a fluid and measured the results of what it looked like when different emotions were used in the presence of the DNA. So if someone was exhibiting anger or fear or hatred or greed, for instance, the DNA would actually wind up as tight as a fist, and as much as 2/3 of the codes were unusable. However, when someone was exhibiting love, compassion, or appreciation, the DNA would actually unwind and all the codes were usable. As further validation of this result, in a separate test with AIDS patients, when love and appreciation was expressed, their immune systems were enhanced by 300,000 times, up to 50 miles away. This field also is impacted by the number of human beings having emotional responses. It's been recorded that there's an accelerated effect and a stronger impact with the more people involved. It's been measured that you only need the square root of 1% of the population to achieve the maximum effect. So in other words, this equates to only 8,000 people to our world's population of 6.2 billion. The Essenes knew about this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They wrote, "When you marry thought, feeling, and emotion, we can move mountains." Given this field of energy, human emotions, and the impacts, I think we ought to take this quite literally. The final experiment I'd like to share with you is called the Global Consciousness Project, also begun in the 1990s but is ongoing. It is run by Dr. Roger Nelson out of Princeton University. He wanted to show that electronics responds to human consciousness. He and his son now have built over 40 devices and placed them all over the world where the data is fed back into one computer for analysis. They first focused on a major event so that they could compare the difference between the regular human consciousness field on an everyday basis versus that of a major event, such as the millennium. What they found was a huge spike in the data at the turn of the millennium, and since that time, that same spike of data appears at major events such as 9/11, Katrina, Princess Diana's death, and many others. What this groundbreaking research really proves and has established is that we collectively impact this consciousness field. So when we take all these experiments in total, the results prove that our very thoughts and feelings impact our physical reality. Imagine what we could change by just using unconditional love. We could help ourselves, others, and our planet just from sharing intentions from love. And we have an opportunity to do just that this year in a grand experiment we've called the Circle the Pyramid event, happening September 9th, 2007, where groups of people from all over the globe are coming together at the center of our planet, which is marked by the only remaining wonder of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid, outside of Cairo, Egypt. So come join us and make the differences we all desire. And thank you for listening.